Sherman defends Kaepernick.
Sure.
Richard Sherman says Colin Kaepernick not being signed does not come down to what he does on the field. According to Jarrett Bell of USA Today, Sherman says it's not about football or color. It's about, quote, boy, stay in your place. He later went on to say, and I also quote, now, if you told me this guy threw 8 pick-sixes last year and played like a bum and no talent, that's one thing. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Mallett, or whoever is playing for the Jets right now, whoever is starting for the Jets is terrible. Have jobs. You're telling me fans would rather you lose and put a worse player out there because a guy took a stand? Ooh, Marcellus.
Yes, ma'am.
Any reaction to that?
Yeah, I have a reaction to that.
You're right.
You know we're going to argue. I already know. Like,
You know we're going to argue. Look, I love me some Richard Sherman.
Don't say but.
Good dude. Almost say but. Good dude. We were just in the community in Watts doing some community work together right before camp. Respect. Love this dude. Disagree with his point. He says it's not about football, but then he references football in talking about the Jets and production and the guys on their roster.
Right.
So already a little contradiction, but I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to get into the semantics of it. I'm going to talk about this. Doing a little research on the topic of protest and Colin Kaepernick, who became the face of protest, but wasn't the only player protesting.
No.
As late as week 16 in the NFL, Colin Kaepernick with 3 other players were also protesting. Now, when you talk about those same protests, of the 4 guys that still were protesting, a lot of guys were still doing the fist in the air, Brandon Marshall, et cetera. A lot of guys kind of compromised and said, you know what, we'll do it in different ways. But 4 guys still kneeling. Of those 4 guys, 3 of them still have jobs at NFL. So when we get to this conversation of blackballing, and it's not about football, it's not about color, and it's not about production, what is it about? Because everyone else has an opportunity.
You know what it's about.
Everyone else has an opportunity except Colin Kaepernick. So I think it is football related, Mary.
who would you rather have, Ryan Mallett or Colin Kaepernick?
Colin Kaepernick. It's not even close.
Okay, so then what are we talking about? You know what this is about. You know 1,000% what this is about. You have very rich white owners. You have a stance that was taken that for many white people, and yes, I am allowed to speak for all of us sometimes, they thought it was an anti-police stance 24/7. They didn't want to hear that it was about something else, that it was about the idea that your particular community was being targeted and treated unfairly and brutally. That was the problem. But now you've got all these rich white folks who are sitting up there that they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with fan mail. They don't want to deal with protests, which, P.S., would last a lot less than you think it would. These things don't last forever. People protested Mike Vick for 5 minutes, and then everyone went on with their lives.
Mama,
and that was a crime.
Respect.
Brutal.
Misguided. Here's the thing. Stephen Ross is going on record and said, and he's under the fire now because he just lost his quarterback yesterday. We'll see for how long.
And we'll see what he does.
Yeah, but he 100% supported not only the protest and the kneeling, he walked in the locker room and told guys, if you want to, I'm fine, to the point that he actually re-signed this offseason a player who protested.
Then how do you,
and then you have Kenny Stills as well on his roster who protested.
People that are far worse at the position have
Because
jobs.
the NFL has never been based on, are you just the best player? I've said this 1,000 times. You have to come as a package. Business, social, everything else comes into play.
Criminal, disgusting human being.
Yes, and look, Ray Lewis was allowed to play football after the murder trial and him not being convicted. Ray Rice was slapped on the wrist with domestic violence until the video came out, and then they had double jeopardy, retried him, and he didn't have opportunity. Why? Because his production was at its all-time low.
Were crimes.
I'm just saying.
Like, we are literally talking about a dude who woke up and decided, I believe this.
And he wasn't the only one, but why is he the only one not playing? Isolate the variables. Isolate the variables.
You actually answered that question, Marcellus, within the first couple of sentences that you said.
Okay, let's go.
That Colin Kaepernick is the face of the protest. So they're trying to chop off the head.
We don't even name them.
Right, you just said, no.
Really?
You said 3 dudes, but then you said Colin Kaepernick. That in and of itself explains why Colin Kaepernick is. Yes, it is, because you didn't name the other dudes.
You ready?
You said Colin. No, I gave you 20 minutes.
I'm
going to take my
Respect.
This isn't about sports and football and production. The reason why Richard Sherman made fun of the Jets is because if it was solely about talent, then yes, the Jets would have signed Colin Kaepernick, because what they've had and what they continue to have is not very good. But on top of that, we also know that the San Francisco 49ers as a franchise has been a mess prior to Harbaugh and post Harbaugh. That this isn't about whether or not Colin Kaepernick was a good quarterback. The franchise, when they got rid of Harbaugh, has now had 3 different coaches since then. They're in a mess. This is about one thing. This is about the fact that Kaepernick has taken it upon himself to speak up in a space, and I'm really happy that he did.
Same here.
Because until we started seeing the Eric Grant videos, until we started seeing the protests, until Black Lives Matter, and I was in Ferguson, and I'll tell you,
Eric Garner.
I was in Ferguson going to CNN to talk about the events in Ferguson and was pulled over by a cop because I looked like somebody. I'm not even making that up. So I'm glad that Kaepernick brought it up. We can talk about football, and if you're going to talk about football, then Kaepernick should be on the field. He's not on the field because this isn't about football. This is about the comfort level of the owners.
Stop making this mutually exclusive. Stop picking one side or the other. It all integrates.
No, it doesn't,
yes, it
Marcel.
Does. All right.
He is not a bad quarterback.
Can you answer this question?
Specifically said they've gotten so much mail as it pertains specifically to the idea that Colin Kaepernick would be signed.
Okay,
that was it. Not about anyone else.
Respect, but didn't Jed York also write $1 million check? Didn't Stephen Ross also support and re-sign players who protested? I'm just trying to show you.
You keep saying players.
Are quarterbacks?
Kaepernick.
Can we go to this question? Answer this. Are quarterbacks judged differently than every other position on a football team? Yes or no?
Yes.
Sure.
Of course. Now, so under different scrutiny, with a lack of production, you talk about a guy who.
Define lack of production.
Huh?
Define lack of production.
Win-loss percentage, that's part of it. Completion percentage. You want to talk about the fact that you won 17-6 in your first couple years, then you go 8-8, then you win 3 games in your next 2 years.
You said they. We've already discussed that the 49ers are a mess because when he wasn't starting,
what about what we just showed you?
They didn't win any games until he played.
Black players protested with Colin Kaepernick. Black players also spoke out publicly with Colin Kaepernick. And all those black players have jobs except Colin Kaepernick. And no one has a definitive answer to that because it's not just about.
I'm giving you a definitive answer. If this was
why do they all have jobs then?
If this was simply a football thing, are you trying to tell me that Mark Sanchez is a better player?
I'm not.
Are you trying to tell us Ryan Mallett's a better player? Ryan Fitzpatrick is a better player? Are you trying to tell us?
I mean, then they are not.
You want to talk about production?
Hold on. Okay, let's be real.
Tannehill in Miami. I want him to recover, but he had 3 times as many interceptions this last season as Colin Kaepernick
You're conflating issues, and this was a locker room issue when I played, when we didn't have a Kaepernick story or a Ray Rice story. Any of that. They never have the best 11 out there. It's a political business package that goes with your production. And you see guys.
But then say that. Because
who's that?
Because what
Jed York said it with $1 million check. He didn't tell Colin Kaepernick to opt out of a contract after this. Colin Kaepernick, on his own, after all of the scrutiny, decides to get out of a contract.
It wasn't because of the scrutiny. It's because the franchise
I didn't say because.
mess.
I said after all of that, decides to opt out of contract.
He was planning on opting out anyway because the franchise was a mess. He didn't trust
Respect. I'm not saying that's wrong. A lot of players opt out. But every single other guy who's done the same thing as Colin Kaepernick or spoke about it has a job except him. But
so
when he's blackballed.
In your heart of hearts, with True Serum,
that's all I
you're
speak.
telling me.
That's all I speak.
That there's no part of you that thinks that Colin Kaepernick is perhaps not on a team right now because of anything other than just football production.
I will answer it this way. When I retired at 32 and I was still getting phone calls, you know what the conversations were like? Because I've been released before, and then you have to talk your way into a job, or you're hearing them say, wow, we're a little skeptical of you getting a job. They pieced together a package that includes your age. We see a lot of guys who are like, why?
He's 29.
No, I'm not talking about him.
I know, but I'm saying
that's
okay,
the whole
not
point.
A factor.
There's independent variables. They integrate everything. If you have Colin Kaepernick, is he starting for your team? That's the first conversation. And if he's not starting for your team, he's holding a clipboard, but a lot of attention comes with a guy who's not going to help our team.
It's attention.
That's a conversation.
It's attention. Are we not taught to block out the noise, don't read the comments, who cares? It's attention. It's 7 people with T-shirts outside that are angry that a dude gets to wear a uniform because he kneeled once for an anthem. But they had no problem when pieces of
You're not wrong, but they
use
attention against guys before. Drew Bledsoe had to get shipped out of town because he was too much attention behind a young Tom Brady. Look, Doug Flutie and Rob Johnson had a civil war because there was too much attention for the backup. I'm just saying.
So who's
attention
the weak link? Who is the person that can't handle this attention? Because that tells me you're a very weak human being if that's a problem.
Now we agree. I get it. We're arguing the structure of the NFL versus this.
I'm going to just focus in on one thing,
okay,
and that's the protest. Because I think we're all in agreement this isn't about whether or not he's a good enough quarterback to be in the NFL. I think we all agree
he
is.
Yeah.
Yes. Because you yourself just said he's better than Ryan Mallett, who's in the NFL.
Look,
if we took a draft of all non-starters that exist, and he's on that list, where are you putting him?
It's impossible for you guys to understand this, I guess.
No, it's not.
It's never the best 53 guys that they can ever attain.
That.
You know that?
But we all agree.
There's guys in the big three that should be in the NBA, but they're not for many reasons.
I've been trying to tell you that about the big three.
But that's the whole point.
I get that.
And some of them are frustrated about it.
I get that. But this is why I'm glad Richard Sherman spoke up. And
Me
this
too.
is what we cannot allow as a media. We cannot allow the reasons for someone protesting to be conflated and misconstrued by those who are offended by the fact that he protested. We need to stay focused on the goal at hand, which is the fact that he's trying to adjust criminal justice reform.
Yes.
And to me, that is so much bigger than the NFL or SportsNation or anything else, because there are black people right now, brown people right now in jail or under the ground because we have not addressed the issue of criminal justice reform. So I want to stay focused on the protest because that's the reason why he's not on the field. It's not his production. It's the protest.
Okay,
and what is he protesting? Not the military, not the police. He's protesting brutality. And we need to stay focused on that.
That's the problem.
I will answer finally with this. I'm going to be on the conversation. I am the owner of the Ravens, and I'm sitting there. I'm the owner of the Dolphins right now. And then the GM and the coach comes up to me, and this is the real conversation. Give me Colin Kaepernick in a nutshell. And this is what they're going to say. And you tell me if it's just about the protest. They're going to say, okay, Colin Kaepernick was a tremendous prospect that got an opportunity. Alex Smith went down, took over, went to the NFC Championship game 3 times, went to a Super Bowl, lost, almost won, and then hit an 8-8 slide. And then in the last 2 years, only won 3 games. Not done. Last offseason, let's go in the last calendar year.
You're not going to mention the fact that his coach left or that the franchise.
Respect. Look, we gave him another chance. He went to one coach, then he went to Chip Kelly, and then now he's here. Respect. I'm not saying that. This is what the conversation is. He had 3 off-season surgeries. He comes back, and he doesn't want to speak to his coach. He wants to get out of his contract with the team and wants to get traded. Then he actually becomes a player, not a starter. He's a backup. Then he has dead arm, which means you can't throw the football. He loses 20 pounds of muscle. He goes out there, wins 1 football game, and then he has the protest. And now he's saying he wants to play football after opting out of his contract with San Francisco. That conversation right there, respectfully, is not just about the protest. And that's what's going on in Seattle.
But he's only 29.
Yeah, oh yeah.
In fairness.
He should be in the NFL, but that's a real conversation.
I get that. And he started off with a dead arm, and if you look at the statistics,
16 and 4.
He continued to get better and better.
Oh yeah,
and better.
16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions.
Exactly, to the point in which he ended up winning like the last game on a game-winning drive.
And you went through what you went through this morning with Tannehill. You signing him?
How long is Tannehill out? But absolutely, I want him. If he's out any significant time,
he's
absolutely.
Out for 3 weeks.
And especially because your owner's already walked in the locker room and given credit and re-signed a player who protested and has a starting receiver who protested. Absolutely.
You keep
Pressure's
saying players who protested. We don't even know who they are.
Yes, Kenny Stills.
Right, but like that has never been a storyline. We've never said, man, what's Kenny Stills? No, because he was never part of this whole narrative and the focal point.
Well, I
which
will
is
say
partly why a protest works or doesn't work, is because you have to have a face. You have to have a name. You have to have somebody.
I totally
with some
disagree.
power.
For people who don't know that Kenny Stills protested all the way through the season, you're misinformed. So don't give your opinion if you don't know all the information.
It's not that we don't know. It's that the point of the story is we keep saying a player that did this, another player that did this. We haven't mentioned any of their names, only Colin Kaepernick.
I've mentioned them, but I understand what you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from. I understand it.
I thought this show was supposed to be fun.
Do we still have more show? All right. We'll be